making a beautiful life. I'm changing, rearranging. I see a beautiful day. It's coming my way. It's a beautiful day.
Amen, amen. Well, it indeed is a beautiful day. Welcome to Beautiful Life. I am your host, JQ Lee, and I have the esteemed pleasure. I always call my guests special, but these two right here definitely hold a chamber in my heart, Piston and Charlotte Devon, and I am so happy. Welcome to A Beautiful Life.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for
thank you,
having
thank you.
us.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, the interviews are a little different when you may not know your guests versus people who, you deem family and certain topics. And so tonight, as I said, this show is actually going to be dedicated to our angel Tehila Debone. And um, when you first hear about this topic, it comes with a plethora of emotions, but when I tell you the one that you leave with the most is the love. And so we're going to jump right into them sharing their testimony. And so, how did you lovebirds meet first, for those who don't know?
You checking me out.
You always says,
You're checking me out.
yeah, that's your story, and you're sticking with it because you stuck with it for a while.
It's consistent.
And I love it because let me tell you, these lovebirds, there's something else. They're special two people to watch because Charlotte lets him have it all the time. She lets him just run with this story. She doesn't correct him. She just shakes her head and smiles. And so I this is a beautiful story because you all met in church, right?
Right.
But prior to that, I want you all to share what were your individual stories because it wasn't like you were just going there to find someone. What was your walk prior to the two becoming one?
Yeah, I mean, I was a mess. So I was
We all.
I was not in the church. I didn't know anything about Jesus, and I was a wild one. So yeah, and going through traumatic kind of family issues and dysfunction, and I rebelled and wanted to go party. And so, I mean, that was from high school and then into my 20s. I was really just seeking something else and wasn't sure what it was and finding it in all the wrong places. And ultimately came to the end of my rope. I mean, I just basically lost everything. I invested everything into someone that I should have never done. Red flags were like all over the place, and I was essentially left with nothing. But I think that was orchestrated because at the end of the day, who I found was Jesus, and that's kind of the miracle in and of itself. And so from there, I just and then I found him. Yeah, that's right.
Please.
So yeah, anyway, I got saved, started going to church. It's still at the same church that I got saved at in Sunrise, Florida at the Faith Center. And that's where we met essentially. Yeah. So
well, for me, I grew up in the streets. So, from not having a father figure, you tend to turn to the streets. So for me was, I was looking for that sense of father figure. So I turned to the streets, and then when you turn to the streets, you begin to adapt the streets lifestyle. You begin to think like the streets. You have the mindset. You just don't care. So I ventured into some bad things, hanging out with bad crowds. Just some not so nice stuff because when you're not saved, that's just the mindset that you have, and that results in me getting incarcerated. So when I was released and I got home, I was kind of angry with the church. So when I got home, I sat in the back of the church, in the very back. I didn't want to be seen, but Charlotte knew of who I was, never met me, because I was told that my pastor, Bishop Fernandez, always used to make reference of me. I guess he was said something during the congregation, because they came by, they visited the prison on several times. But I was angry with the church because I felt like, why should I even go to church? You know what I mean? I knew, why should I even go? So I sat in the back, and then one of the pastors saw me and said, "What are you doing sitting in the back of the church? You need to come sit in your usual seat." Because I was active. I was going to church, but I was in church, but playing church before I got, and then so when I got home, uh, Charlotte and I had to go over to an event that they wanted me to be part of the prison ministry, and I didn't know how to get there. Never knew who she was, never met her, but she was happened to be walking through the lobby, and I was asking for direction as to how to get to that particular place. And one of the members, who was actually a staff of the church, just happened to see Charlotte just walking by the lobby, and stopped her to ask her to give me the direction how to get there. And she got mad because she felt I was taking too long to write the direction down. Like, you taking too long to write the direction down, And I'm like, well, you talk. I'm like, you got to talk so I can understand. So she got mad, but anyway, I ended up going to the event, and we just developed a friendship after that. Because I wasn't really looking to date, because I felt like, why would anyone want to date me with my past, especially coming from being incarcerated?
Mm. You know what? I love you all for your transparency. A lot of times people can look at the glory and they don't know the full story. And I've always loved that about both of you, that you're very transparent. In your BC days, before Christ days,
Yeah.
even about your marriage, as beautiful as it is for those who get an opportunity to glean from it. There are times that you will share some of the challenges. And, I love the fact that your pursuit individually, at the church, was to seek God. And there was a lot of healing that had to take place before the two of you actually came together. Talk a little bit about that, because there are times in relationships that people are coming in with baggage and just unresolved issues, and
Right.
they take it into a relationship and they're so shocked and amazed when it doesn't work,
Right.
versus them being able to just really be honest, just to be brutally honest about where they are, their hurts, past experiences with relationships. Because, Piston, you came into the church saying that I was angry with the church about some things that had happened.
Yeah.
Yet it's interesting that we can be so upset with life's challenges, but we still find ourselves running back to Him.
Right.
Talk a little bit about what was the healing process for both of you as you begin to even express interest.
Well, my bishop called me in the back when he knew that when I was back home. He called me into the in his office, and immediately he gave me an assignment that I did not want, but he said, "I'm gonna assign you to do this," and I'm like, I told him flat out, "You're talking to the wrong person." He said, "No." He grabbed my hand, he prayed in the meeting and said, "You're the right person," and he walked out of his out of his office. And still, I did not want to accept the assignment that what I mean. I was like, "Nah, he can't be." So I tried ways to get out of the assignment, but every time I would go to different ministers and I go to different members to bring people who I thought would be better for the position, they kept giving me more assignment. Okay, tomorrow you're gonna do this. Okay, this you're gonna do this. You know what I mean? So, but it took time because I had to make sure that I felt that I was not really mentally ready for the assignment, but I had to take time for myself because I'm not good to nobody else if I'm not feeling good to myself. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I just wanted to sit. My mindset was, I'm going to go to church. I'm just going to sit and allow God to minister to me. But going through the assignment was the healing process for me because I had to now force myself and really rely on God Himself to go through the assignment, to be able to lead the prison ministry, to be able to lead other individuals, because it was like when when you got to do this, but in the back end you're like, I don't want to do it, but yet God said no. Like Moses tried to get out of it and said, no, I'm going to send you, I'm going to give you Aaron. That was me. that was literally no, I'm going to send you. And then he sent another pastor to be beside me to say, no, you're going to go ahead and do that. So that was the whole
Tag,
thing for me.
tag it's you.
Yeah.
And Charlotte?
For me, I mean, I think I had a lot of baggage that I knew about. I mean, it wasn't anything that was a mystery to me. I knew my family was just nuts, like it's coming from something that I wanted to be not a part of. I couldn't identify what it was at the time. Now I understand it was just really like kind of toxic relationships and dysfunction. And once I realized, my whole life could change, because I had done everything so wrong that I was like, okay, Jesus, fix everything, whatever it was. So I just was really like one of those, like, like when you're really young in the faith and you're just like on fire for Christ. Like I really was like one of those, like we literally, we had a really good like young adults ministry at the time, like a bunch of 20 somethings. And so I was very heavily involved, and we were literally like going and evangelizing on the streets and praying and looking for like healing and being able to just do some radical things. And I was that, on fire. And and through all of that, there were many moments of, deliverance is not a one-time thing. It was a process. So there were moments of, prophetic, somebody speaking over my life, or somebody having to lay hands and just break off some strongholds. And so I had those snotty crying on the floor, prostrate moments. But I also had a lot of really awesome friends, godly fellowship and sisters in Christ that I never had before. Like I never really had female relationships. And so I was and had an issue, like really tough relationship with my mom. And so I really didn't understand that. And so in Christ, like God was, giving me these relationships that I never had and teaching me how to have healthy relationships. And so that was kind of my journey. And so I was very intentional about dealing with those issues ahead of time, because I really wanted to be married, because for a long time I thought that was never going to be for me. Like I thought nobody would ever want to marry me. I just was so like blemished, and then I realized like, oh, you mean it's a free gift? You mean I get to start over? And so I ran with it, because I was like, oh, free, I'm the type that's like, if it's free, let's go, let's take it all the way. So I was like, oh, I get to go to heaven, I get to do all these things, I get to get married, like what do I need to do? So whatever it was, I was doing it, like if you told me to go this way, I just wanted to know that was God and I would do it. So I never really got caught up. I didn't know like church tradition stuff. Now I recognize it because of, we've been in it for so long, but I didn't grow up that way. So it never really affected me, where some people, that's all they know. And it's different, it's hard for them to differentiate the relationship and what the Bible says versus like tradition and doing, kind of those things that have nothing to do with the relationship with God. So for me, it was pretty clear cut, because I'm like, the moment that it looks crazy, I wasn't into it. Because even as a non-believer, I'm like, I remember going to a Pentecostal church. I was dating a guy. I was a teenager. I was in my I think I was 19, 18, something like that. And he went to this like on fire Southern Pentecostal church with people running up and down the aisles and all that. I was not having it. I was like, this is nuts. Y'all are crazy. Like that wasn't my thing. Now I'm like, oh, I love it. I'll run with you. So for me, but I understand it now, like I get it. But so for me, I know the difference. Like if you're faking it, doesn't, I'm like, it doesn't bother me, So for me, it had to be a real experience. Like Jesus had to be real, because you better deal with these issues, and so little by little, he was bringing me through it. And so it was like a whole process. And so I was like, all right, well, we got to deal with the trauma. We got to deal with these things. We got to deal with that. Like what's going to make me healthy and whole so that I can sustain a marriage, because my key thing was that I didn't want to bring anything into a marriage and then have to deal with divorce or any type of trauma and the
resolved issues.
Yeah, because I didn't want to repeat the cycle. For me, it was like, oh, this is a free gift. I get to start over. let's start over with a clean slate then, you know, and not bring in all the other stuff that was dumped on me that we didn't want that. And so even having those conversations, we were very intentional about, okay, what issue. I told him flat out when we dated, I was like, this is who I am, this is what I've done, it's crazy, like, because that was anybody who I was interested in, I flat out told them, and most of the time they'd like run out, like, bye, see you later. I'm like, great, perfect, you weren't the one, you know. So it didn't bother me. So when I told him, he was just like, oh, okay, well, here's my story. And I was like, oh, okay, we're not that far off, you know. So it kind of worked out.
Let me tell you why I love this conversation. That's why I know that it's going to bless people on so many different levels. Both of you came in with such damage and such baggage that you thought it was going to be too excessive to ever be able to really find true love. Right. But it started with you all finding your first love, you know, which is Jesus Christ, and the fact that he does make us over, that we are truly new creations. Like, I remember a young woman saying somebody saw her in the airport and they were like, aren't you such and such? And she was telling them, no, you don't know this one. Like, I have been made brand new. And so the beauty of you all giving yourselves the time to be able to be made over, giving yourselves that time to be able to be healed, so you're not coming in bleeding on the one who was actually sent. And so we're going to fast forward in the story, because I think that's awesome. Some of that I did not know. So I think it's awesome that you all didn't rush it, but you really gave one another the time and space needed. And then here's this thing that is so God, you know, that you both were able to be vulnerable with one another, and the person wasn't running to the door, you know. And so that is the beauty of God making someone over, you know, that people cannot be held to their past when they truly surrender, they truly repent. God has a beautiful way of rewriting the story. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. That blessed me. And so fast forwarding. So as the two become one, how soon did you all talk about wanting to have a family?
Immediately.
I know immediately, but we said we're just going to enjoy life during the process. You know, you know, like we sat down and we got a pen and paper and say, you know what, okay, we're gonna have a baby this, we have a family this. No, we just say, you know, we knew that we always wanted to have a family, but we made the decision that we're just gonna enjoy each other in the process of having the wanted to have a family. Because see, the danger is a lot of people, you know, they want to have a family, but they don't take the time to really love and enjoy each other the process. And one of the words that you said, you know, which is very crucial and important, is time. People want to jump in relationship, but they don't understand between when you met the person and then other person is the in between. They don't deal with the in between, the time, the process. So for us, it was just, you know, making sure that we was intentional about our date night, making sure we was intentional of doing the things that we, you know, because for me, I pay a lot of attention to Charlotte. So for me, making sure if I see things out of the norm, okay, something ain't right, okay, I gotta do this, you know what I'm saying? So for us, you know, we went on trips, we did this, we did that. You know what I mean? We will pray for our family. I'll lay hands on our stomach, the wombs are blessed. So we knew we always wanted to have a family, but we make sure we took the time to really enjoy and spend time with each other and to love on each other. So when we did get our family, when we did get our family, that we knew that we did whatever it took, and then we didn't miss out anything. Because some people they don't do that. They get a family and then they end up going this way instead of going this way.
Listen, you just dropped a nugget there, bro. Like, honestly, I pray that people really are taking notes and really understanding the depth of this conversation, because there are times, and you can tell the marriages where it's just about the children, you know, or it's just about the career, or it's just about making sure that person's individual needs are met. That time that a couple puts in, and when I tell you all, they are serious about their date nights, like, you know, we're in business together, and some business things can take place, but they're going to make sure that they are investing in their marriage. And that is one of the things that truly blesses me, to be able to view on the outside and the inside a little bit, with these two. Talk a little bit about that a little more, Charlotte, just about, yes, we can be busy women. You know, we could be multitaskers, but taking the time to spend with your mate and making sure that that is quality time. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just important. You have to, your marriage is work. Like you have to put in, what you put in is what you get out. So, you know, are we roommates or are we like spouses? Are we sharing in each other's life? You know, that's essentially what it boils down to. So yeah, if we're too busy and I feel like maybe we haven't, well, I guess I gauge it by like having conversations, like, you know, at night, do we have enough time to just say, how was your day? Or the thoughts that were, you know, on our minds, and then, you know, spending time together. So date night, I always tell people date night is not like always fancy. Like date night could be just going to the park and watching, there's a plane park. So we love to go watch the planes, you know, land at the airport or whatever. That's date night for us, you know, taking the dog and walking, or maybe it is going out to dinner. So, but though it doesn't matter what we do, the key is are we spending time together? Are we getting to know each other? Are we knowing how each other's feeling? If there's something that's on my mind, then I definitely, you know, want to share it with him, and get his feedback and opinion on it. And then vice versa. I want him to be able to share with me, because this is my best friend. So if this is my best friend, then, you know, we need to be spending time. Like we're, you know, what do you do with your best girlfriend, you know?
Right.
So kind of
Right.
similar. It is relationship. And I think that's, you know, so I think some people get it twisted. Like they just assume that all, I mean, chemistry is part of it. Yeah, that's great. But it wears out after a while, you know, like yeah, you can, we've been married for 10 years. I mean, like there's only so much that chemistry can take, you know, only so far that chemistry can take you. Like, you know, what I love is being able to have conversations, you know, and being able to share. And like I'll ask him questions about, like, you know, like the other day I was reading a scripture and I was like, what does that mean? You know, and so he's like a walking concordance, you know, and so
Aw.
so he'll be able to be like, well, he could like quote scripture just off the top of his brain or whatever. I don't know. I guess when he was in prison, he just read the Bible like back and forth. Um, so I'm able to just kind of pick from his brain, like as far as like Bible stuff goes, or sometimes I'll just explain what's happening, you know, you know, whatever else I'm working on or whatever in my brain. And he just listens, like, because the other thing too is I know what he's studying me, you know, so I know that he's you know, he's getting more understanding of who I am, and I'm
Mhm.
getting more understanding of who he is. Like, I don't think everybody's growing. So just when you think you've got somebody figured out, you don't, because people grow. And that's what happens too with divorce. You grow apart, you don't grow together anymore. And so we have to be intentional about growing together. Like, hey, we're still here, right? Or what's on your mind? Or hey, this is what's on my mind. So I think that date night is just a settling. It's just an easy, like, kind of coming together point where it's like, hey, all right, let's have a moment, because sometimes the week can get by and we haven't had a conversation. That can happen too. Like there's moments where we sit in the car and we just don't say anything. And that's okay, you know, like it's just how often are we doing that? Is that like a norm thing, or like, hey, let's bring it back, let's go out, you know? So, and then like date night for us isn't necessarily something that it used to be like every Friday night, but now schedules are kind of a little crazier. So it's just like, oh, do we have time this week? All right, let's go to the beach, or let's go real quick to go grab. It could be fast food. It could just be getting in the car and picking up something to eat and coming home and
Mhm.
watching Netflix, or watching like Married at First Sight and like talking about the couple. Like, you know, like
That's
it
right.
it doesn't have to be something extravagant. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
nice to do that and get out of the house and dress up or whatever. But we don't do that all the time, you know, like we're not trying to like spend all our money on, you know, eating and drinking out. Like it's not about that. It's about the relationship. You know, same thing with Christ. It's not about what you do. It's about the relationship. So, and then the other thing too is making sure that we're praying and that we're having individual fellowship with the Lord. You know, having time, because that's also important, and that's what brings us together. So, you know, just making sure that God is at the center of it, and that we are being intentional and making sure that, you know, each other understands that they're important. I think that's the
You got to find what works for your marriage.
Yeah.
A lot of people get into marriage and they try to base the marriage based on what they see on the television. You know, they try to mirror what they saw on they see on the Kardashians or this and that. Marriages work. So when you get married, a lot of people have this fantasy of marriage, but they don't prepare you for after the honeymoon.
Come on now. Come
After
on.
the honeymoon that's marriage. You know what I mean? Marriage is not when everything is glorified and everything is hanky donkey, which is great. You want your good days to outweigh your bad days, but can I still love you when when you're not lovable today?
Come
You know,
on, sir. Come
still
on.
love you when I come home from work and I'm coming in all happy and then you say something to me all of a sudden like, whoa, what's going on? That's marriage. The work, you know what I'm saying? So you know, people, you cannot base your marriage on your next door neighbor's marriage, because you got to find what works for you within your marriage. You know what I mean? Every day is a learning process. Like Charlotte says, every day for us is a learning process. So we learn each other. You know what I mean? It said to submit ye one to another unto the fear of the Lord. So you got to, you know what I'm saying? So for us, and you got two different individuals with two different personalities. You're not always going to agree.
Come
That's
on.
just fact. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, when we come together, you know, how can we come together as a married couple? Because we have one thing in common, that's to build and that's to grow. You know what I mean? So if you're going this way, you know, because you and one of the biggest danger that you do not want to do within your marriage is to get advice for somebody who not only envy your marriage but had a bad marriage, and because they're still bitter from their marriage,
Mm.
and you want to get advice. No, you know, you need to talk to people. Yes, if they went through something, but tell me, how can I get through it?
Come
You know,
on.
tell me how when I come home from work and my wife is acting crazy or my husband acting crazy, how did you get through it? What did you do? I don't want to hear what I put on the TV, watch Kardashian. No, how did you get through it? And every time you look at that individual, there's still a spark in your eyes. That's what I want to know. You know what I mean? So that's the danger. You know, people trying to base it on what the neighbor do. No, because marriage is work. It's every day. It's a full-time job. So yeah, we find time to date. And if your bad days outweigh your good days, then something is wrong. You got to come back, sit down, have a discussion. Okay, let's figure this out. You know what we need to do to get this thing right.
That's so good, you all, both of you. Just very transparent points. I think it's important because you all have made a concerted effort to make sure that you are not only pouring into, but that you're surrounding yourself with. It's very important that a man of God who's married, I'm not saying that you can't have single friends, but definitely have people who are going to speak life over your union. I think you said something that was so poignant, Piston, because people can be scarred or hurt when they've gone through divorce. And so now their image of marriage, because of the marriage that they were in, sometimes is not always the best
Right.
advice. And so you have to be very careful about the counsel that you take from people. Is it godly counsel?
Right.
Are these people, if Charlotte comes and tell me something, am I saying, Pitt shouldn't have done that? But you know what? You go on back there. You get it. You two get it together. You all, have that date. Schedule that date anyway. I know you're upset with him right now, but schedule that date anyway. Or does she have a friend who says, you know what? That's why I don't want to be married, or that's why
Right.
that's very important. And I want to segue into that as we come up to this topic, because as we talk about counsel, how far into the marriage were you all when you begin to experience the issues with infertility?
I would say, well,
Right.
the first year or two, we weren't really, it was just kind of like, well, if it happens, we won't
Yeah.
be mad, but we're not necessarily active in it. After about year two, then it was like, all right, well, let's start, whatever that means, right? So there's not much, there's no like, hey, ready to start trying for a baby? This is what you do, right? There's no manual,
Yeah.
there's no,
Yeah.
other than, obviously
Yeah.
doing what married folks do.
I think year
Um,
5, I think.
so, but yeah, I think by year
Yeah, I
five,
think by year
that's when the
5.
struggles
Yeah.
started to come in.
Yeah.
Because now it's like, okay, well, we're doing everything, we're supposedly doing
Yeah.
everything correctly as far as like we love God, we go to church, we try to walk out our faith, we in our mind we're doing the right things. So where's baby? Where is it at? And so it was getting really
Yeah.
frustrating, especially now it's like tracking um cycles and timing things, and now we're
Yeah.
actively doing these things, and I'm charting temperatures in the morning, and so doing all of that, and then every month, oh, is this it, and then only
Right.
to be disappointed, right? And so it was like every single month it was just like, is this it? Like up and then down, up and then
Mhm.
down, up
Right.
and then down. And so yeah, I think by year 5 it was really like, maybe there's something wrong with me, and he's like, maybe there's something wrong with me, maybe there's something wrong with both of us, maybe it's
Right.
because of our past, maybe all of these things start to flood your mind, because it's like, why is this not happening? And we've been praying and asking, and what's going on? And so yeah, that's the frustrating part, because so I think we struggled in our faith. um I remember there were times where we just both cried, like we both would just be, and I'm like, this can't work, like somebody's got to be the strong one
I
at
know.
some
We both
point.
can't be crying at the same time.
So then we resolved to be like, all right, you'll be
Yes.
strong now and I'll be the weak one, and then we'll vice versa, like you're not allowed to do that. But I think eventually, I know for me personally, I finally got to the place where it was like, and I know God was like provoking me and pushing me to like just believe and just speak it,
You're right.
just start speaking it. And so
Yeah.
I got to a point where I was like, all right, well, this is gonna happen, it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. And I didn't really believe it, but I just spoke it enough to increase my faith.
Yeah.
Like I was sharing that the other day. Like sometimes even if you don't believe it, just say it. Just say it, because the more you say it, then your faith can connect to it. And so I think that's kind of where we started, to get
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
That I'm telling you, it's one of the, I think for men, it's very difficult when you want to have a family, and because we've been taught as men that we are the provider, we are the protector, we are this, we are that, you know what I mean? So when you come home, or that where you get up in the morning and you see, you can literally feel the emotion that your wife is going through, and you can see it. Our
Mhm.
natural response is that we want to fix it, you know what I
Right.
mean? Sometimes you find yourself in a position where that all you can do is nothing you can do, and it's one of the most difficult position to be in, because you want to fix it, you want to see your wife happy, I mean, you want to, you want to, you want to be that husband, that father, you want to be that mom, what I mean? And then you find yourself in a position where you're like Job, you're wrestling. 1 minute your faith is strong, 1 minute your faith is weak. Okay, God, this is me. And you have people, coming in your ears telling you, well, you ain't no man, or you ain't no family, or you ain't no this, and then
Wow.
oh, maybe something wrong with you. Why you ain't got a kid yet? Why you waiting for? Maybe what's this? What's that? Man, I mean, you need to join the club. You need, so then you start. So now you have these voices in your ears, and then you go to church, and then you find yourself in the position at church where you're just going through the motions at church. You still love God, but you're still going through the motion, and then you're like, God, when is my time? You know what I mean? And sometimes you're not careful, you feel, well, maybe God forgot me, well, maybe God don't love me, maybe because of this, so you find yourself in your wrestling position. But for me, I had to literally, when I tell you, like David, I had to learn to encourage myself in the Lord.
Come
Mm.
on.
That was one of the most difficult things I can do, because I'm seeing her going through her emotions, You know what I'm saying? But for me, I got to be strong not only for her, but I got to let her see, with it, I'm strong for myself. But when I'm outside, I'm getting all kind of voice, especially because sometimes as men we can be rude to each other, especially those that have a family and people. They mean well, but the words came out wrong. Not understanding that you do, rather you helping me, you created more damage. You know,
Right.
so that 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 going through that process was very, very difficult. And if you don't know who you are, and is it no, but if you don't know who you are in the Lord, I see why some marriage go apart. I see why people would walk away from the church and they walk away from the faith, because that is one of the most difficult positions to go in. But I had to learn to encourage myself in the Lord.
Some things that you and Charlotte made mention of. That's also a part of why I wanted to do this show, because there are dynamics that two becoming one that you'll go through. And yes, there is this oneness, but you're still two individuals who God is making and molding and shaping and pruning, and all of these dynamics are going on. And I want to park here before we go into further honoring our angel. I feel like we do a disjustice to men in them feeling that they just have to be strong, as if you aren't experiencing the loss as well. And I wanted to allow a platform, kids, for you to talk about those earlier years of seeing Charlotte go through the letdowns as far as the miscarriages and what have you, and what that view was for you. Just for a moment, I want to park there for a moment.
It was hard because um being in the hospital and seeing her going through that most difficult experience, it was extremely hard. And then after that, we came home and we did all that stuff, coming home, not it's like still seeing this situation as if it's still a dream, that tomorrow we're gonna get up and we're gonna hear that cry, the baby cry. Um, but for me, I felt like as if I wasn't on an island by myself, because at first, you know, all the emotions was geared towards Charlotte. And I get it, she carried the baby in her womb. I get it, she had that bond, she felt the kick. And I understand that. But what a lot of people don't understand is that we as fathers, husband, we still hurt too. I mean, I used to hear all the time, well, you don't understand what she's going through. People tell me that, because you didn't carry the baby, or you don't understand because she had that bond. And you don't understand, you will never understand because you're not because you are a man, and so I used to hear all kind of stuff, you know.
Mm.
But what they fail to realize is that me and Tehila, we had our own separate bond. You know what I'm saying? Because when Charlotte was I don't care where we at, I don't care where. The minute I would walk into the room and she would hear my voice, that's when she started moving. She would move in Charlotte's stomach. You know what I mean? I don't care. She could be not move the whole day, but the minute she hear my voice, that's when she moving. And it dawned on me when people, because at first it started bothering me when people were saying what they said. But I said, wait a minute. No, that was our bond. That's the connection that we had. You know what I mean? So to them, it's like maybe I didn't feel the kick. Maybe I didn't feel the move. But for me and her was the voice. And I mean, and God said my sheep would know my voice. She knew my voice. I don't care who in the room would talk, she would never move. But the minute she hear my voice, she
Aw.
knew I was in the area. And what
Amen.
people don't understand is, as men, we tend to be overlooked. We get to put we tend to get put in the category, or Oh, and your husband too, or oh my God, Charlotte, how you doing? Yeah, they be so nice, and then all of a sudden be like, oh, how is Houston doing? You know what I mean? It's like we are afterthought. No understanding that as men, we hurt because we have to deal with the pain of the wife as the emotional and stuff like that. But then for me, it's like I have to turn my feelings off when she's hurting, but not taking the time to heal healthy, So I have to be there for her, but who's there for me? And if I'm not careful, I can find myself in a place where I can get resentment, I can get angry, I can get frustrated because you don't understand my feeling. So for me, so that first period, my whole focus was on her, you
Mhm.
know. But then when after the weeks goes by, and the months go by, and everybody's like, I mean, till this day, she still get phone calls, she still get things, she gets still that. I don't get nothing. You know what I'm saying? Nobody called me, but I'm okay with that because there's a few friends of mine that I talk to when we meet, but I'm okay with that because God had to remind me, no, I'm with you through the journey. You know what I mean? It's because I'm creating something within you so that you can speak to other men that's going through the issue because they don't understand you are hurting just as much she's hurting. How she hurt is different from how I hurt, but the same thing. We are still dealing with the same thing, and
Right.
it's a loss. You know what I mean? No matter how we agree. For me, I go in the car, I go wash the car, I go in the shower, I walk around the house, I find things to do because that's how I deal with it. So I can be there for her. Because if I don't take time to go find time for myself, I'm not good to her, I'm not good to myself.
You know what? This is definitely why I wanted to have the conversation, to not only honor our angel, but to honor the two of you, because I believe that there are marriages that take hits because people become robotic and they go through the motions of what is expected. And you just said something, Piston, in reference to how important it was for you to steal away and to make sure that you were being very truthful for the grief you were experiencing as well, so that you could be in a position to come back and support your rib like you needed to. But here's the thing I think that some people miss out on. And I pray that this show will cause us all to be very introspective about how we see, um, loss as it relates to the mother and the father, because both of you lost a gift, right? On this side, we know you will see her again. We know that she even blessed us while she was in the womb. I can remember, and I think some things we do out of ignorance. I can remember the very night that you called me, and I want to say this, but the very night that you called me, not even 30 minutes before you called, my mom asked about Charlotte, and she asked how Charlotte was doing. And so when I got the call, we were out, and I said, "Mom, take me to my car." Like we stopped going where we were going. I said, "Take me to my car. I need to get there." And I asked, would it be okay to come? And I said that to say, as we sat in the hospital, and I could see the weight, Piston, on your face, and I could see Charlotte, like, still just trying to process everything because she's still going through contractions, and this process is still going on. Take us to that day, you all, as baby Tahila was making her entrance to the earth.
So we were at 40 weeks and 6 days, at just a routine ultrasound. This was a first pregnancy, so it's not abnormal to go past, your due date. We had already planned to have these tests. So it's like a non-stress test and I can't remember the other one, but they're pretty routine. Any mom who's gone through pregnancy knows them. And so we're thinking it's going to be just a regular, um, you know, scan. And so we had already planned for a natural birth and at the birthing center, and everything, bags were packed, car seats in the car. It's just a matter of, okay, just waiting for her to come. And, um, we, the ultrasound tech is there. It's a quiet one. So, I mean, they can't really say anything. It's like, their rules are not doctors or anything, but, sometimes there's like good ones that'll like talk to you and whatever. But this one was like just quiet, didn't say a word. And so I was just, kind of curious of like, hey, maybe we're off by a week and that's why, it's taking so long for me to go into labor. Like I was not even at all ready. And ultimately, they do their thing and we have no idea what's going on. She leaves, she walks out of the room and doesn't say anything, and then comes back with somebody else, another tech, and she does the same thing. And now she's like pressing really hard on my belly. And I'm like, what is happening? But like, we don't know. I mean, I don't know if this is routine, if this is normal, can't really tell. I mean, we start when they both leave the room. I think at that point, that's when we're like, I don't know, something might be up, not sure what. I'm thinking they're going to find like a genetic abnormality or something. Maybe it was like, there's an extra toe or something. Next thing we know, they come back to the room. One of them is holding a phone. And they say, hey, the doctor would like to speak to you. And we're like, what? So apparently the doctor wasn't there. And so they had to have the doctor on speakerphone. And all of a sudden it's this doctor we've never met before. This male doctor. And he's like, hi, I'm so, and I didn't even know his name. And all we heard was there's no heartbeat. And I mean, I was like, you're lying. That's no, what are you talking about? Like, this is not real. This can't be real. Like, what are you saying? Like, it just was like a shock. And I knew it was real when one of the techs, the first tech that we were dealing with, was crying. And that's when I just broke down, and we both broke down, and I literally wailed. I didn't even scream. I just wailed, fell on the floor, and was like, what are you talking about? And so it just was it felt like a dream and a nightmare. Like, how could this be real? Like, this isn't happening, but it is happening. And so, like trying to keep it together, but like, what do we do? Like now we have to figure out, okay, I have a baby who supposedly doesn't have a heartbeat. Now what? And so now I have to shift my mind into, okay, now we have to do something completely unexpected, and I'm not going home right now. I'm not going to be able to just go back to life as usual. Like our whole life just literally just shifted and changed. So we go to the hospital, and it was like the longest car ride ever. And I'm literally in the car, I had nothing else to say but Jesus. Like I was just like, Jesus, 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 because I had learned, from way before, when you don't know what else to say, just call on Jesus. And that's all I could do, because I was like, this can't be real. Like maybe we'll get to the hospital and they'll tell us like, oh no, second opinion, it's not real. So, like holding out hope there. And then going to the hospital. And I mean, God was with us. I mean, that was very apparent, because even then, like our midwife had OBs. We already knew that they always consulted with OBs. So the OBs that they consult with consistently were at the hospital waiting for us. And so they made arrangements for us. And I mean, it was very smooth process for us to get in and get out to where we needed to go. So that I was like, okay. When the doctor came in and, they did an ultrasound again and didn't tell us anything, of course, we kind of already knew the drill. Doctor comes in and basically confirms again our worst nightmare, and just basically explains like, this is what's going to happen, and he was very good about it. He was an excellent doctor. I mean, we couldn't have asked for a better person, a better OB to be with us during this time. And so he just explained everything, and he was very gentle about everything, but just was gave us everything we needed to know, like, okay, this is what it is, these are your choices. But ultimately he was like, listen, you can decide to do tests, and you can decide to do an autopsy, and you can do all these things. But at the end of the day, in my expertise, in my opinion, these are just things that happen, you know, and so you can go down that road, but just understand that it can potentially be like a rabbit hole and you get no answers at the end of the day. Okay. But these are the steps. This is what we're going to do. So we had to go through induction, like complete induction. Like my cervix was not dilated. I had to do what they call like the Foley balloon, which is basically a catheter. And so we basically had to go through that, you know, and again, they don't know how long it's going to be. Nobody can tell you how long it's ever going to be. And so it's like, all right, now we just have to prepare for walking through the fire, essentially. And so I remember just, you know, saying like, all right, Lord, you have to come through. I have to trust you. And I remember just in that triage room, just saying, I have no choice but to trust God. You got to be with us. You have to stay with us, because I don't understand this. You know, I just don't get it. Like we were in like such a state of shock of like, how is this reality? But we got to deal with it. You know, like we can't stop time. We can't go backwards. We can't go I don't want to go forward. You know, it was like forcing us to go forward. And I knew it was going to be painful, and I hate hospitals and I hate needles. And that was like the absolute opposite of anything that I had ever wanted, ever, like in imagining what our birthing plan was going to be. That was never, hospitals were never a part of it. Induction was never a part of it. And so here we were, you know, going through that. But at some point, there was like 2 phases basically. So it was like basically opening my cervix up, and that took about 12 hours. We had to go through that for 12 hours. So they gave me medication to start the labor process. And the goal was hopefully beforehand I would have given birth, because that OB, he's like, my shift is over at this time. So ideally we would like to see if maybe we can speed this up before I leave. But it didn't happen that way, which was fine, because the other doctor that he works very closely with was able to take over. So we were kind of relieved in that aspect. But in the interim, I actually had reached out to a friend of ours who is a man of God and a pastor and a prophet. And we just know him to be like somebody that you call on, like, you know, if you need prayer and you need, you know, God to really come, like somebody who's like Enoch, walks with the Lord. And so I called him, and he prayed with us over the phone, and didn't just pray. He was just asking, what are you believing for? And what scripture are you standing on? And how did you, just gave us, you know, a lot of encouragement. And so when he prayed, it was literally like heaven opened, and the literal presence, the manifested peace of God that surpasses all understanding was with us in that hospital room. It just opened up. So my doula was there, who I don't even know if she was a believer. And I had a really close friend who was also there. And so everybody recognized that, you know, God was literally in that room. And my friend had told me, she was like, your countenance changed. You sat upright. You know, it was a whole different demeanor. And I felt it, you know, it was like, all right, let's go, you know, let's do this. Let's get through this process. And so God was literally with us through that journey, as difficult as it was. And we were still believing, and we were still praying, you know, for a miracle, that, you know, I was still holding out, like, okay, maybe she's going to come out and cry and defy the odds, and it'll be our miracle child, you know. And but I also was preparing for maybe not, you know. And so, you know, going through that whole process, and then of course delivery happened. But even through that, like, everything just really happened in such a magnificent way that only God could have orchestrated it. And so yeah, it was difficult. It was literally beauty and ashes at the same time, you know. Like, he does give you beauty for ashes, but man, those ashes really came,
The pain.
yeah, it was painful. It was beautiful and painful all at the same time, you know. And it was like, whoa, okay, so this is what all women have experienced, but not all women have experienced this, you know. It was just such a weird, crazy reality that now we have to process and figure out, how is this got to be life for us, you know, moving forward. So that was, I think that was where we were at. And then it was like, let's get home, because that's when things really start. Because as long as we're in the hospital, we're just in limbo. Like, this is just kind of delaying the next process the next step. So that's essentially what it was. I mean, it was like time stood still during labor and delivery, and we went through that section of it, but that wasn't even the beginning. That was, I don't know what to even call that. That was just a transition, you know, it was just, you know, and then when we got home was a whole different, that's when things start to,
Reality
yeah,
sets in.
You
And
know,
you made a comment, Charlotte, in reference to, at one point not wanting to go forward for what forward represented. Leaving the hospital without baby Tahila in the present, but forever being in your hearts. Talk a little bit about that transition as you go home, because one of the things, you know, as and I said this, that there were things that we may do, people who love you may do in ignorance or fear for not knowing what to say or what to do. I know, I would send you all texts, but I didn't know, were you, I came over, once or twice, but I didn't know, how much company did you all want? Did you want company? When did you want it? So it's like so many things that people play by ear because you just don't know. I know, Charlotte, you and I, would go out to eat, and I did not want it to be a situation where you're having to console me and I'm supposed to be consoling you. And so I think sometimes people, when something like that happens, they don't fully know what to say or how to respond. So talk to our beautiful viewing audience about what you would say to someone who is in the circle of someone who has lost their child.
yeah. Well, I can tell you the first thing when we came home, I was relieved to go home, but I wasn't excited to see all the baby stuff. You know, it was like, what do we do with that stuff now? You know, that was just a reality. It was just boom, there it is. But one of the first things that we were met with when we got home was like this beautiful arrangement of flowers. And I never understood like the sympathy gifts because I had never experienced losing anybody close to me, much less my own child, in my entire life. But in that moment, I was like, I get it now because it doesn't replace what you lost. But man, it was just such a nice and beautiful gesture that somebody went out of their way to do that for us. And then it was like, then they kept coming. And I loved every single one of them. You know, I read the cards, and for us, we just wanted prayer. We wanted prayer. We wanted to know that people were thinking of us. The compassion that even the nurses in the hospital, I mean, the nurses showed us so much compassion, and they didn't have to, and I've heard other nightmare horror stories, of other people who've experienced something similar and they didn't get the same treatment, and they didn't, but God was clearly with us. Like the favor of the Lord was clearly upon us, that people recognized it. And so and one thing that the man of God had said to us the next morning about, this, he talked about the scripture where, we mourn with others, we mourn with our brothers and sisters. And I embrace that. So for me, I really love the encouragement. I recognize too, like, cause I was the same way. I would have been the same way. Like, do I crowd? Do I not? Do I text? Do I not? So, I mean, for me, it was like, I just appreciated every single gesture, whether it was, people coming over to see us. And no, we didn't want to be crowded every single day. I didn't want to see everybody, but there were moments where it was like, okay, when we let people know, and we were very intentional about like letting people know, hey, we're gonna, do this. And, with the funeral and those types of things, like we're open to that. So if you'd like to come by, come by. If not, that's okay. So we were intentional about that. I was intentional about posting on my Facebook page to let people know, because I didn't want to get the questions, of like, hey, how's the baby? So we were intentional about nipping that in the bud really quickly. But I'd say, as far as, like our close circle, we were also intentional about letting people who were the closest to us know directly from us. Just so that they were aware of it. So, and it was like, well, we're processing it. So you figure out how you're going to process it. And, we'll get back to you when we come up for air, essentially.
Right.
But I would say there, and then there's like this period. So in the beginning, everything is raw, everything is new. Nobody knows, we don't know what to do. Certainly other people around us didn't know what to do either, because nobody anticipated that. Nobody who was close to us had experienced that before. So it wasn't like we had people like directly, with us who could tell us that. Even the doula and the birth workers and the midwife and all that, everybody was affected by it, because it just wasn't expected. So there's that period, and the sympathy gifts, and we had so many just kind and thoughtful things, like a picnic basket and these books that I've been reading, and boxes of stuff and flowers and all of it. I loved it. I just absolutely just loved it, because it was something tangible that I could hold on to. And so I just really embraced it. But after all of that, and even after the funeral, and I think that was kind of the commencement of it, where now things start to get less and less, right? The check-ins are fewer and fewer. So really, that family is going to get a lot of support and a lot of immediate responses right at that moment, right? But as time goes by, I'll say when it really hit was January, because the year changed, right? So it wasn't even Christmas. It was just the year changing, that I just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm getting farther away from when I did have my baby, when I had her and she was alive, right? So it's like time is moving, and I don't want time to move. And then it was around March or April where I was like, all right, everything's settled. We're about 6 months out. What does life look like now? Like life without our baby, like, what is that? That's when I would say the support can be intentional, because now they're having to live life. We're having to now figure out, what does life look like after dealing with the grief. Now, for us, it was 6 months of dealing just with the immediate grief. Now, for other people, it may not be. And I'll tell you, it's 6 months for us, and that's relatively short. A short period of time for most people who've experienced something like this, but that's because of God, because he's just given us the strength to do so. But we still have our moments, like, it's not like, oh, it's all over. But it just became a little easier for us to manage and deal with. So yeah, I would say, in the long term, and I've spoken to other women now who have the same experience 8 years ago. And this one lady shared with me, she was like, I was just having a moment the other day. It just kind of hit me. So grief always will come. It doesn't go away. It's just now learning how to manage it, right? And so and I do know that there are quite a few women who have not been able to bounce back. They're still stuck in this state of like perpetual sadness and loneliness, and like a sunken state of grief, rather than dealing with it in a healthy way. I was very intentional about dealing with it in a healthy way. So I was like, okay, group, let's get into group. Let's do individual therapy, how much time do I need? So, but I already kind of understood trauma. I've helped so many different people through different like serious situations, that I'm like, okay, well, what would I do? So I was just, kind of taking myself out of the situation, go, well, what would I counsel somebody on? And I did that for myself, understanding that eventually I will end up having to do this for someone else. But yeah, I would say there's no right or wrong. The best thing you can do is just ask, like, what is it that I can do for you? Do you mind if I send, like, I've had people say, do you mind if I send you scriptures? Or I have certain songs that have ministered to me. Do you mind if I just send them to you every so often? Sure, no problem. I don't mind. Or they might tell you, no, I really am not in that state of mind right now to receive that. Maybe they're angry at God. Maybe they don't want to hear scriptures, right? So ask. And if they say no, don't be offended. Just don't be offended by that. Just understand that might be a season, and you might have to just pray for them from afar.
And that's what I was thinking. Yeah, of being able to pray for them through that season. As we begin to wrap up, I want to talk about this love affair, this love story that you all have. Charlotte, you were very intentional, even as you were lactating and being intentional about continuing to honor our angel Tehillah, and even in going to one of the milk banks and providing milk for those mothers. Talk a little bit about what that transition was like for you, and how you came about making that decision.
Well, I had already planned to donate from years ago. So, like, way, way long time ago, when we first started on this journey, I was like working as like I was working with at-risk pregnant teens and at-risk pregnant moms, and I was also a breastfeeding coach. And so I had already known that there were babies in the NICU who needed breast milk, and it was difficult for them because they are in the NICU, and it's harder for their moms to be able to produce because of the situation. So I had already planned that from the beginning. But the thing was, is nobody, because of everything that was happening, like nobody was like, hey, by the way, your milk's going to come in. Like, I didn't even think about that. That wasn't even on my mind. And then it was like 3 days later, all of a sudden, it was like these changes were happening. And I was like, what's happened? What's going on? And so when I spoke with the midwives, they're like, oh, yeah, nobody told you. Yeah, that's going to happen. And so they came by and, basically said, okay, if you want to stop it, here's what you do. It's a process. You've got to do these things to kind of stop the milk from coming. You can't just stop it cold turkey. There's certain things you have to do. And I was like, no, I'm going to donate, because this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted to really do. And I think that was the thing that I was looking most forward to. Because I just understood like the bonding experience that mothers and babies have through that. It's such a like a miracle thing. I mean, pregnancy, childbirth, all of that is just a beautiful thing. And so I said, well, I wanted to donate. There's babies who really do need this, and so I have it. I might as well just give it. Like, I can't not do that. Like, just for me. It was very painful as far as emotionally in the beginning, because it was like, I'm supposed to be doing this with my baby. I'm getting up in the middle of the night to pump, but I'm not. I'm supposed to be taking care of my baby. Like, like I'm supposed to be because I had already planned this in my mind. Like, we had 9 months to get ready for this. And so it became therapeutic though after a while, because it was like, okay, I can do something, because rather than sit around all day long, and because I basically took off like 3 months and so I just was home and I didn't leave the room, and I needed to do something. I needed to, aside from getting up, taking care of myself, and, during the day I wasn't working, I wasn't doing anything, that I was like, all right, well, let me do that. So it kind of gave me something to do, because I should be taking care of my baby. I should be bonding with my baby. I should be feeding my baby, but I can't. So that kind of became the replacement to it. And I knew I wasn't going to do it for very long. So I did it for, I believe, about 4 weeks or so, just because it started to interfere, with regular life. I can't, do this for the rest of my life. Although, if I wanted to, I potentially could, but it just was interfering with things. So I found a natural stopping point was when I was ready. And in the meantime, I, called them and I had to go through the process. So it took about four weeks anyway to get through the process, because you have to go through, you have to get blood work, you got to fill out a questionnaire and all those things. And so by the time I was cleared and ready to go, and they sent me like the packaging stickers and all that, that's when I was like, all right, well, I'm ready to, do a drop off. And so we did the drop off. And so, yeah, so, I mean, it was something that I was happy to have been able to do, but it was also a little bittersweet as well. But I was able to, feed quite a few babies. So, and that was in Tehillah's name. So, yeah.
I love it. Do Apison, you want to share anything pertaining to that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, to see her going through that transition with the milk and stuff like that, getting up in the middle of the night, in the morning time, for me having to um, label the bags, clean the bottle,
Yeah.
and then, so and that process, and for me it's like, well, that's supposed to be tequila's milk, but and then at one point, I had to catch myself from not getting angry because um just watching her going through that and having to take the milk, you know, the, have all that milk just piling up in, because you have to keep it at a certain temperature before you bring it over, and so I had to always keep storing the milk, so yeah, it was a journey, and to the question that you asked earlier about, about the what to say, you know most of the gift that was coming was for Charlotte, all of the gifts was coming was for her and things like that, so I think when you send somebody, you got to be mindful that,
Both
um,
lost.
yeah, if two losses, if there's two individuals that's experience that's going through the loss, because and again, I'm not saying nothing, because there are a lot of women, a lot of family out there today, whether you listening or someone that not here, that have experienced that or are going through that right now, and people can be, not understanding that the two individuals are going through the loss, and so whenever they reach out, they only reach out with the mindset of understand, I'm reaching out to the mother,
Hmm.
reaching out to the mother, I'm reaching out to the mother. What can I do for you? What can I do for you? What can I do for you? you know and so um sometimes not saying nothing can be more dangerous, more damaging, shall I say, than saying something. And then, thank God for you, JQ, for being there from day one, always sending encouraging texts and things like that. You know, the funeral home did a phenomenal job. If you in Palm Beach Lakeside Funeral Home, they did a phenomenal job. Man, my friend, close friend of ours, Sham, who owns the funeral home, they did a phenomenal job, man, with everything. Because I mean, you know, they were so mindful of respecting our wishes of what we wanted to do to do for Tahila. Everything was about her, not what we. Because some people, they come in and they say, "Well, this is what you need to do." No, it was Tahila's wishes for honoring her, and um, it's like Charlotte say, every single day it's a process, because um when I go out sometimes and I see my close friends bonding with their daughters, and when we going out, and when I see, even sometimes to this day, people walk up to me, man, what's up, man? How's the baby, man? How you doing, man? Man, what's up, Papa? What's up, Daddy? You know, and I'm like, dude, where you been? I mean, come on, it's like since October. You don't know that we lost that. You know what I mean? So sometimes you could be not careful. You could find yourself getting angry, but then I like with love, nah, man, this happens. So sometimes, and I understand some people, just don't understand.
Hmm.
Sometimes, just be intentional of just, you know, man, I'm praying for you. Man, I got my love for you. Sometimes just a hug
Yeah.
can do, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but every day it's a journey. I've experienced a loss before. I lost my dad. I've lost my cousins, different things. But there's nothing that's like when you lose a child. Because what do you do when all of a sudden you be waiting for this joy, be waiting for your miracle, you've been waiting for the almost sudden. I mean, you're at cloud nine, and one more sudden your promise just feel like it's been snatched out. And, your promise comes out, and it's there. What do you do? Will you still stand? You know,
Mm. Come on.
will will you still love the Lord?
Come on.
You still have love for your spouse.
Come on. Come on.
Will you still live? You know what? You know, what's life to you going forward? Will you begin to second guess yourself all of a sudden? Feel like you're less of a man, or you're less of a, what would life be for you after that? When your promise is snatched away from you, or your
Yes.
promise no longer, where your promise seems to you where it's no longer a promise. What would you do then? And for me, every single thing that I do is intentional of honoring in behalf of the healer. The legacy must live on, the life must live on. And it made me a better man. It made me a better father. They're like, well, no, no, I'm a father. Whether you want to, maybe you don't see it,
Come on.
I'm a dad, regardless of the fact I'm Tehila's dad. She's that,
Yes.
you know what I mean? So for me, it just made me stronger. It made me more intentional. It made me more aware about my surroundings. And it made me that when the when the twins come, then I know, that I would be mindful to let them know that you have a sister.
Yes. Well, let me tell you all something. As we begin to wrap up, this is what I knew would come out. Um, the love story of you two. When we can know scripture, we can quote scripture, but when it's time to live it out, like when we read that love conquers all, when we read that it covers the multitude of sin, like when we read the action of love,
Right,
and then you really have to literally walk it out.
right,
I want to close with you, both of you sharing what God did after, because I think that one of the most beautiful things about your union, both of you speak about it being work, both of you speak about the intentionality behind it, but there is a love, and I believe that it is what you've done individually with the Lord as to why you are able to collectively love so deeply and intensely, because we know that there are people who've gone through what you all went through and they're no longer together.
right.
What do you feel, and I want you all to take this last moment to speak to a couple about why it is always worth fighting for love and always worth making sure that we understand we can go to God hurt, we can go to God angry, but at the end of the day, as Jesus said, not my will, but your will be done. How do they get there? And how do they continue to make sure that the love is growing when they experience loss?
The first thing you got to do is make a decision. That's the first thing. You got to make a decision to fight for like Paul said, fight the good fight of faith, because your faith will be tested. You know what I mean? So you got to make that decision, that to fight, because what, you're gonna leave your spouse and go somewhere else? You got to start all over again. You know what I mean? So where you going? What you going to? The you know what I'm saying? The grass ain't greener over there. You still got to fertilize that grass, and
Come on.
you got to put work into what you got to do. You know what I mean? So I don't care. The long I got to, where you going? Fight for your spouse.
Hmm.
If you can go through that tough times, see, the true measure of your marriage is not when it is good. It's when
Mm.
you're going through the challenges.
Yeah.
Come on, sir.
Going through the challenges, that is what brings you closer to each other.
Yeah.
That you can look back over that and say, babe, we got, oh man, we went, remember that time, how we overcome that, how you go through that.
Come on.
Because this is one we can quote, or the love chapter, we can quote that, love is this, love is this, we can quote that very good. And then some people have to throw that in. No, but it says love conquers all. It said love bears no wrong. Love don't look at no fault. Love, you got to, love have to literally come alive in you. And at the end of that chapter, it said above all is love. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So love, you have to fight for your spouse. You have to fight for you, because it said love one another. When I looked at my wife, I don't see her. Jesus said you gotta love her as Christ loved the church. That's
Mhm.
what it said. You know what I mean? To get, it's a sacrifice. So I
Mhm.
forget about me. You know what I mean? When I look at her, it's not about me. And if you come into your marriage with that mindset, it's all about you and it's her fault and this, it's not going to work. At the end of the day, you got to get yourself out of the way, get your ego out of the way, come together and say, no, this, we will fight for this. We
Yeah.
will fight for our marriage. We will fight together, because if we can get through this, there is nothing that we can
Yeah.
go through together. You know what I
Come
mean?
on.
Because you think that this right here is just a little, sometimes that might just be a bump to test the true measure of who you are as a
Yeah.
person and who you are as a spouse. You
Teach.
So you gotta come, you gotta fight, because if you ain't gonna fight for your spouse, then what are you fighting for? Who you gonna what you gonna fight
Jesus.
for the girl next door? You gonna fight for the neighbor? No, nah. Charlotte, no. And you can't even look at Charlotte the wrong way. Because that God said that is my responsibility. I'm not gonna go out there and throw hands and act crazy and get locked up. No, that is my responsibility. God said you need to love her just as I love you. It's unconditional love. You know what I mean? There's no condition here. I ain't loving you because of. I'm loving you in spite of, because the way I love you is a reflection of my love with Christ.
Jesus.
So when he teaches me how to love her, that in the midst of the difficult situation, that is what I'm telling you. Charlotte and I love is so stronger than before. You
Mhm.
know that big that because we went to the test, we
Yes.
went to the trial, we went to the fight. That we can tell somebody else, and maybe you going through a difficult situation right now. What you need to do is first of all, you need to learn to love yourself first. Understand who you are as a person, who you are as Christ, and you all need to come together as a whole and say, we're gonna fight for the. He said, fight the good fight.
Yeah.
You gotta fight,
Amen.
fight, you gotta fight, you gotta fight. Because if you ain't fighting for your spouse, guess what? There's somebody out there waiting to fight for her or him too.
All right
You
now.
gonna be the one to say, you ain't coming up in here. No, this is ain't no vacancy here.
Come on.
There ain't no room in the end. It's full. You know what I mean? It's blinking. So this is no, you gotta fight.
So not on your watch.
Not on my watch. Ain't happening. I don't.
Well, Charlotte, I don't know if you need to say anything else, because
I mean, I will add to it and say that, that's why it's important to choose the right one.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and she did. You did. You did. You did
but
good.
no,
You did good.
he's right. Like it really did bring us together, but I can also see how it can pull people apart if you
Yes.
don't have the right foundation to begin with,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Because if there's cracks already and you never dealt with it, this can
Mhm.
certainly tear you apart. For us, praise God, we followed him and his leading, and that we had a very
It wasn't
solid.
easy. It wasn't always easy now.
That's true. That's true. But I mean, I think it brought us together. And so you also have to think about, who are you connecting with,
All right.
because y'all gonna go through some serious stuff together.
Mhm.
Life is just like that, especially if you're believers. It's not gonna be easy. It's not a cakewalk.
Right.
And there were moments, where he literally had to pick me up off the floor, and wash me. And literally, like, I just had a breakdown, and I was going off on him about something, and he just recognized instantly that it wasn't what I was, upset about. It was, the grief that was, coming in. And
Mm-hmm.
he had to bathe me. I just remember he just had to bathe me when I was in the shower, and he's like outside of the shower and like, okay, give me the washcloth and give me the soap. And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. And so, do you have somebody who's going to be able to lift you up when you can't do it for yourself,
Yeah.
Um, and I just was praising God that I had somebody who can, do that. And so then I want to reciprocate that for him,
Amen.
those moments, so that's love, because when you get it for yourself, then you're going to want to do that for someone else. Right. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is this going to break you or make you?
Right.
And I think we were intentional, and we had decided, like, no, we were given a promise. We were given a word. What does the Bible say? This can't be the end of the story. This just has to be, a part of the process. And
Right.
so, we either believe or we don't. That's it, And so we decided that we're just going to stand on the word, but we're also going to make sure that we're not believing something that somebody else told us. We need to know exactly what that word says. And And there's certain scriptures that, God says, I'm ready to perform it. In Jeremiah, I think, I can't remember right now, but I have it written down. But in Jeremiah, he asked Jeremiah, what do you see? And Jeremiah's like, well, I see the tree, the almond tree. And God says, you've seen well, and I'm ready to perform my word. I'm ready to perform it. And I was like, well, he said he's ready to perform it. Then you got to do it. Like, what are we waiting for? This might have been a delay, what we were looking at, but it looks like a setup from God's eyes, and so we don't know. We don't have answers to, like, and I'm not trying to paint this like rosy colored, glasses type of thing where we just only see the good in things. And no, we have our moments too. And I consistently ask God, why? Like, why do you have to do this? Like, why couldn't you do something else? I don't care what it was. It could have been anything else. Like, we could have been homeless on the street as long as I have my baby, So there are times where, and I consistently do ask in our deep prayer times of like, why? I don't get an answer for that, but I do get answers for other things. Right. So I have to understand the sovereignty of God, but understand that he does allow me to question in a healthy way with a right heart posture. And then also being able to just talk it out with each other, because I just don't understand. And I'm frustrated, and I talk, and then he hears it, and then he speaks directly to me, knowing who I am and knowing how I process things. And he's able to really minister to me. Right. So is your spouse ministering to you? Because that's church starts at home. Like, it's not, if you're going to church on Sundays and your home is a wreck, there's something that's wrong. Right. Like, you're not going to be able to do anything for anybody else. Right. Until you get that right. So I would say, that Christ has to be the foundation, and it's going to show you. And so even if there were cracks in the foundation too, so just as an encouragement, God can fix it. He just has to expose it to you first. Like, you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. And once you acknowledge it, then you say, all right, God, you come in and you do it, because something like this brings you to your breaking point, and it makes you understand and realize, like, there's nothing I can do that is beyond my control. There's certain things that I cannot, like, at the end of the day, I don't control my life. I don't control who lives. I don't control who dies. And then I also had to realize and understand too, that the devil doesn't either. Okay. Because there was
now
where I was like, did the devil just kill our baby? And I was like, wait. Like, it just rocked my entire faith foundation, because I was like, I need to understand this, because is that true? Like, if this is true, then we got problems. Like, everything that I built, my faith upon is not good, and so I had to go and understand the scripture and read. And we went to the book of Job first, because I think that's the best example of that, and that God allows things to happen, but he's the controller of life.
There you go.
He, for whatever purpose and whatever reason, he's allowed Satan to be the principality of the air and to some degree control what happens upon the earth, but he also gives us power, his power, right? He gives us a certain rank and position above that. And he also controls who lives and who doesn't, right? Now we can get into more theological and philosophical debates according to scripture, but at the end of the day, we've seen it for ourselves that, there's like the other day, God stopped the car from literally crashing into me and causing either death or destruction. And I saw it, right? But I couldn't help but ask the question, but you did that. Why didn't you do this? Can't get that answer. And that's just natural. It's normal. But it also showed me that God's like, be still and know that I am the Lord. Just
know and that. just like you said, Charlotte, like, I love that we can go to him with questions. And then at the end of the day, we have to say he is a sovereign God. He does not owe us explanations, yet we still love him and still serve him. But for some, and I'll say this, as we wrap up, for some, they may not understand that because they don't have that foundation yet. And this conversation that we're having tonight, you're able to see God operate in someone's life beyond loss, beyond hardship, beyond the anger and the hurt and the questions, you're able to see that you can still rise. You can not only just love, but exponentially improve your marriage because you recognize, and the two of you coming together and just the things that you all have said, I know it will bless because when you recognize, my God, if we can go through this,
Right.
there is nothing that would be able to infiltrate because we are a fortified
Right.
union. And so
Right.
as we close out, I just a heartfelt thank you, Charlotte and Piston. You can tell, you can just, we've been able to experience the love and the dunamis power that is working through the two of you. Again, you're going to have your days and you're going to have your moments. But when you can maintain hope and you can maintain the peace and the joy that he's giving you, it is a different scenario.
Wow.
And so thank you two
Well,
for
thank
unselfishly sharing your
Yeah.
beautiful testimony. I get a chance to see it just in this beautiful image, the good, bad, and the challenge. But I'm so all the more blessed to say that I can brag on your marriage when people feel like marriages aren't worth the paper anymore. Well, I could tell them they are a bold-faced liar because my friends have a bomb.com marriage and they
Yep.
work on it every day. And so thank you for being that blessing to us in the singlehood. I told somebody the other day, I was like, it is ghetto in the singlehood. But I thank God and I will patiently wait on him for whoever that very blessed blessed guy is. But he will be worth the wait, and you all continue blessings.
Thank you.
Continue watching and waiting as a watchman for that promise. God continues to be faithful, and I love you all, and I thank you for being on A Beautiful Life.
Thank you.
Man, thank you.
And so, as we wrap up, I pray that this show blessed you just to know that God is very present. He said he would never leave you nor forsake you. And so, if you are a couple that is going through loss, has experienced loss, God never allowed that to happen for you all to lose what he has built. Continue to work on the foundation. Continue to pour into what he's blessed you with. And as you've heard from Charlotte and Piston, for those who are the circle to individuals like that, reach out to them, ask them. And that way you'll get a chance to see how they want you to walk out this moment with them. And so I am again your host for A Beautiful Life, JQ Lee. Thank you all so much for tuning in.
I'm living a beautiful life. I'm making a beautiful life. I'm changing, rearranging. I see a beautiful day.